Is it SQL or SQL? You can call it SQL, you can call it SQL, whatever you call it, but this is virtually one of the most important tool for any data professional. In this video, I'm going to teach you basic SQL concept in a matter of minutes. By the end of this video, you'll not only have the understanding of the SQL queries, but you will be able to read, write, and modify any SQL query in the world. Stay with me till the end. I have a surprise for you. Hey everyone, welcome back to Analytics Everywhere. I am Shubhrajit Basu. I have 9+ years experience into data analytics, and from my experience, I'm going to teach you 12 SQL concepts. SQL is one of the most powerful tool in the data industry, and this is aligned with all the data rules. And to be very frank, SQL is more like an English language. Let me show you how. In this video, we are going to talk about the databases, and then we'll go to the basic of SQL syntaxes, which is select, from, where, order by, and distinct. And then we'll go to the more SQL syntaxes, which is count, group by, having, distinct count, and top. And finally, we'll go to the one of the most important SQL concept, which is join. What is SQL? SQL is a structured query language which help you to get the data from the databases. Now, what is database? Imagine database like a library, right? If you go to the library and if you see that all the books are thrown in on the floor, then you would never find out what you are looking for, right? That's why the database comes in. A database is like a shelves in your library. It organizes all the information in a clean and structured way so that you can quickly find and update or even search for what exactly you need. Imagine all the shelves are connected to each other. That's when we call that RDBMS. Now, what is RDBMS? RDBMS stands for Relational Database Management System. Sound fancy, right? But it's simple. It's like, all the shelves are connected so that you can bring or get data from one shelf to another shelf. For an example, let's say a table has a student information, right? A student age, student name, and the locations. And another table has student's code and the subject they have chosen. So these two tables are connected to each other so that you can get a data from table A to table B, and that's what we call as a relational database system. We have multiple SQL editor available in the industry, right? And for out of them, there are a lot of free SQL editor are also available. And for this video particularly, I'm going to use the SQL Server Database Management System, and which is from the Microsoft and which is free too. And for the data, you can either copy the code I am going to use, or you can download the data from the description box. To write SQL code, you need a SQL editor. Now, I am using Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. You can use your SQL editor as of your choice, like MySQL, Workbench, and so on and so forth. Now, for this entire exercise, we are going to use a table called employee. The first one, let's get the employee data on our screen. How do we do that? We write a select statement and we write star and then from and the name of the table. And once you write that, you go on the execute and click on execute part. Now, once you execute, you get the entire table. So employee ID like 1, the name John Doe, the department is 1, and the salary of John Doe is 50,000. Hire date is 2023, and then email and so on and so forth. So how this is exactly happening? So you are selecting star the entire table, entire columns of the table from the employee table. So it is like an English language, or you are asking like a select star or select give me from a particular table. Now, in any case, if you don't want the entire table, you want any specific column from that table, what you can do, you can specify the column name. For example, I can just write first name and I can write last name, and then I can say, okay, give me the salary and my joining date, right? Or hire date. So if I write the 4 of these, and then if I go and execute, I'll get the 4 column over here. The next one is to find out that out of these employees, what are the employees who are having more than 50,000 of salary. Okay, the first one. So let's write the code again. from employees, and then I'll just select that. I'll start. Okay, now I want the employees which are having more than 50,000 as a salary. Now here you can write a where, and then you can define the column which you're looking for, salary, and then you can say greater than equal to 50,000, right? And once you write that and you click OK, you see that you get all the salary, all the columns which has only a salary is equal to or greater than 50,000. Now I have said a 50,000 greater than, so it is like, it is including the 50,000 because I'm using a greater than equal to 50,000. Now in the next step, what we can add more filter on where clause, where you can just write and I can say give me the employees who has salary more than 50,000 and the hire date is on 2024 1st of Jan. So either 1st of Jan 2024 or greater than that. Okay, how do we write that? We just go here and write and say hire date. Once you write that, and then you can say again greater than equal to, and you can define the date. Okay, 2024, and you can say 01 and 01. Now make sure that your date format should match to the table format, and once you're using a date, you should make sure to put a quotations on that. Once you do that, select and execute. You see, now we have the employee which are having only the salary of more than 50,000 and the hire date is either on 2024 1st of Jan or greater than that, like okay. Now, out of this data, if we want to look into the employees based on their salary, how should we do that? Let me copy the code over here and let me paste it. Now we have the 3 employees which having the salary more than 50,000 and hired on or before 1st of January 2024. Now what if I want some employees which are sorted through my salary? Then in that case you have to use something called order by, and then you can just write salary, right? And once you write that and once you go select and execute, then you see that you are getting employees who are based on the salary. Now by default, SQL editor or any SQL editor, your order by clause takes a ascending, like the lowest would come on the first and the highest would come on the last, right? But if you want vice versa or the reverse to that, you have to define something called descending. Once you write that, DESC is a short form of that, you select that and execute, it will give you that. Like you see, my Joseph Clark has 71,000 as a salary and is coming on the top. Okay, now if we have to look into the employees or the any column as the unique value, how do you do that? Now for that, let me execute the old select star for employees. Now we have employee first name, last name and department ID. Now if you see the department ID, that it has data which is coming multiple times, like 1 2 3 4 and then 1 2 3 4 and again and again. If I want to understand that what is my distinct department ID, how do I do that? In that case, what you can do, you can first define your column you are looking for, right? So if I just write department ID and select and execute, it gives you all the data, but I am looking for only the unique value over here. For that, you have to write distinct. Once you write distinct, there, and once you select that, you execute and you get all the distinct value over here. The next one, now we need to find out that what is my count of the records in the table, the entire table, right? Now for example, if I just do that, you see that I'm getting a lot of data over here, but I'm not sure how much is my total data count. In that case, what you can do, you can use a count function, right? So how do you do that? You write a count function and you keep the star over here and you use a parenthesis on that. Once you select that and execute, it gives you the total number of column. Now, it has lot of benefit while working with the SQL queries. Now, the next one is to find out the department wise employee numbers. How do you do that? First, we run the code to see what the column we have, and we have the employee ID and we have the department ID. Now, to get a count of the employee ID, instead of writing star, what you can do, you can just write count and you can just write employee ID. Now you can see that I am not following uppercase, lowercase because it really doesn't matter in SQL. So you can use anything over here. If I execute this, it will give me the 20, which is coming for the same as my previous one, right? But the next step is to find out that this employee of 20 is divided into, in the department wise, like which department has how many employees. How do you do that? So first you have to just get the department ID over here, and then once you get the department ID, I think I have made a mistake on my department ID spelling. Let me just verify. Yeah, now department ID is coming fine. Now I will say I have added the department ID. I'll add a group by, and then I will add my department ID. Once I do that, I select and execute, and you see my department one has 5 number of employee and so on and so forth, like 4 as 5, 3 as 6, and so on and so forth. But if you see that there is a gap, there is no column name for my employee ID count, I can give a name on that. I can say total AMP, and once you do that, this is how you can write a name on the aggregations function. You just keep a blank and then you can put a name, right? So how it is working, so you're just choosing your department ID and then you are grouping that same department ID, so every department is counting the employee for that sense. Now if you want to add more column and if you want to get that details, you can add also that column and all the part in the group by. Now the next part is to get the department which has employee more than 5. Now how to do that? Let me first copy the code and paste it over here. So let's say this is my code, and if I run it, it gives me the department wise total employee, right? Now after that you have to add something called having clause, and then you will say having my count of total employee is greater than 5, right? And once you do that, you select and you execute, and you see you are getting only one of the department. Why? Because if you go and execute and you see that you have the 4 department, which is, so this, because of that, once you apply the greater than, it gives you only the department 3. But if you add equal to, then this will give you the 3 of the department, right? Question should be why not where clause, why having clause? Because if you are using an aggregation function, the where clause will not support that. For that you need to something called a having function over here. Now we got the details of the department wise and a total employee count, but in an different scenario, if you have to get the details of some other column, right? Let's say here if you just go and if we just write the select star from employee and execute, and you see that this column is unique, right? But what about the department ID? In any scenario or in any business case, if you have to write a count of that, and if you want to find out how many department you have, right, total number of department, so what you will generally do, you will go and you will definitely write count and you will write department, right? Or maybe you will write depart ID from my employee, correct? So this would be my code. And once you do that, you see you are getting 20. But ideally in a scenario, if I go on the little top and if I just probably get the data from this code, which is like we have now department is 4, right? 1 2 3 4 is my department. So why we are getting it? Because there are a lot of duplicates value over here because of the data structure. How do we handle that? We have already used a distinct to get a unique value, so you can add a distinct Okay, and once you add a distinct on inside my the count function, and then you run it, you get the data of the number of 4, right? Why this is happening? So this is first calculating all the distinct count over here, and then it is counting my value. Okay, now we got the department. The next one is to get the top 3 employee based on the salary. Now, how do we do that? First, again, we'll go to the basic. We'll just write select star from employees table, and once you write, you execute. And now, what you have to get? You have to get the the employee ID or the employee name, and then the salary which is having a top. So what is the process? For SQL Server, you have to write something called top, right? Top is the function. Now you defined what exactly you're looking for. Here we're looking for 3, so you can do the 3. If you want 5, if you want one top 1 employee, you can also do that. And then we can define the column name. Like for example, I can say give me employee ID and my first name and my last name also, okay, and the salary, to understand that if it is correct or not. Now if you do that, if you just write this, it will randomly pick the data, correct? Because we are not ordering the data. So for that you have to write something called order by, and your order by should be based on salary. Now if I just do execute, it is again picking all the lowest salary, but we are looking for the top one. So for this case, you have to add something called a descending, which will give you the top data in that. So how this is working? Okay, so if I have to explain you quickly, so this is first going this employee table and descending all the salary from top to bottom, right? And then it is going here and selecting only the top 3 rows out of that, and then selecting all 3 columns out of that. So this is how it is working. And in this way you can get all the top 3 or the bottom 3 employee details from the data. Here is a surprise. I'm going to conduct a free Q&A sessions for freshers and experienced data analysts. And in that sessions, you can ask me directly all your questions and all your doubts on the data analytics part. And I'll try to answer from my experience. Now you have to, you need to follow me on Insta, and I'll put a story and you will have a link from there. You can actually register for that, and it's gonna be coming weeks. So stay tuned, follow me on Insta for more updates. Okay, now the final part of the entire, the SQL syntaxes, right? Now we have the employee table. We have been working with the employee table for some times, but for this, session, we are going to introduce another table, which is my department table. So let me see how my department table looks like, and I'll select both of the table and I'll execute. So this is my employee table on the top, if you see this part, and if I just get a little up on that, so this is my department table. So department table has department ID and department name. Now I need my department name from my department table to my employee table, right? How do we do that? We are going to use something called left join over here, but there are other concepts like a join, inner join, right join, and the full outer join. Now this is very simple. You're trying to get all the data from left table and get a department name from the right table. That's why you are using a left join, because left is heavy over here. But if you're trying something different, like a right table to left table, you can use a right join. If you're only looking for a table which has unique between both the table, you can use the inner join, and all the data for that you can use a outer join. But for this we are going to use a left join. Let me just write the left join. Okay, how do you do that? So we'll just write select star from employees, and we'll write left join, and then we'll say department, will define the name. But in the join you have to define by which column you want to get the data. But what is the common column between both the table, right? So you write a on, and you write employee, and then you say, okay, give me depart ID, because this is the column which is common between both the table, and then departments dot my depart ID, right? And once you do that and you select and execute, you see you are getting everything, right? You get all the department data, all the employee data as well as all the department data. But how do you filter out that? Now for this, there is a concept we have called alias. What is that? Instead of writing the entire employees table, you can define a small name for that. And let's say for department, you can use D. I can rename this employee to E and department to D. Now for the star, I have to define that which data I want. So I can write the E for the alias, and I can just write a dot, and then you write a star. And then from department D, you can write D dot my depart name, right? I want only my department name, not the department ID, because my department ID is already there in my employee table. Once you do that, you execute and you get all the department name for my department ID and for all the employees. Thank you very much for watching, and if you find it valuable, then please do like, share and subscribe. And if you have any questions, any concern, please put it on the comment. I will reply it personally. And for more fresh data content, please to follow me. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you once again. Bye bye.